gives them their name, date of birth, you know, where they came from, age, and basically we enter that number in here, and then we get the fingerprint.
The final step, a photograph. And all the files are transmitted by satellite to the U.S. Visitor Central Database.
Since 2006, the biometrics commenced, 2,600 migrants have been processed through the cutters out in the Mona Pass. Of those 2,600, about 700 have come back with positive hits for biometrics. And then of that 700, about 12% of those are actually brought ashore for prosecution.
Once we find out that they're in the system, we can log into U.S. Visit and get some of the details of their history, whether they've applied for a visa in the past or whether they have been deported from the U.S. or if they have a criminal history. We will pass that information to Border Patrol, and they will send an agent out to interview the migrants on board our cutter.
Those identified as candidates for prosecution are quickly brought ashore and processed by the Border Patrol. Both biometrics and the close interagency coordination were new in Puerto Rico in 2007, when Master Sergeant Daniela Marcus reported on interdicting illegal migrants in perilous passage.
The Coast Guard could never be certain of just who was on board their cutters and who was trying to enter the United States, a concern that only grew in the wake of 9/11.
We do the interdictions in the Mona Passage. We believe that they're migrants, but our greatest concern is that they're potential terrorists or prior terrorists, prior felons, former murderers, drug smugglers, etc. So the intent was, once we get them on board a Coast Guard cutter, is that we would find a way to identify who they really are. Prior felons.
The answer came in November of 2006 with the introduction of a device which allows the Coast Guard to use biometrics, in this case, fingerprint data, to identify the migrants on their cutters.
It entails taking the device and then having you provide 2 fingerprints, one from each hand, and then we take a picture. And then there's a little drive that we download all the files on, take them to the laptop, and then enter the biographic information.
We run that via the U.S. Visit database, and quite frankly, we've got some hits on felons. So if we get people with warrants out, usually for smuggling or something else that they've done in the United States, we can and do arrest them. If there is no warrant out, if the fingerprint comes back negative, we send the migrant back to Dominican Republic. However, if they try again and we get another hit on them, that is felony.
Within, an hour or less, we can bring these folks on board, process them with biometrics, link up with our sister agencies, and they can tell us exactly who we have on board and what dangers that potentially are faced on board.
I think a day or two we'd been out there and an aircraft spotted a Yola, had about a dozen migrants on board, went out there, had a couple positive hits, process ran its course, and they ended up bringing one ashore for prosecution. So it was very rewarding. We were, frankly, we were a little surprised that we got 2 hits out of a dozen. So as soon as that happened, I think we all kind of realized, hey, this is going to be something big. This is a pretty big deal.
We all have basically the same area of operations here, which includes all of Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands.
The Caribbean Border Interagency Group, CBIG, was formed in 2006. It unites multiple offices of Customs and Border Protection, local police, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Coast Guard in a joint effort that's dramatically reduced illegal migration attempts.
Putting a biometrics machine out on the Coast Guard cutter where you can take fingerprints, where you could take pictures, and you could identify who was actually trying to enter into the United States. Once these people are in that system, they remain in there forever.
Having sailed in these waters and having dealt with these same issues back in the 80s and 90s, I think the biggest change is that this tool has allowed us to bring consequence to those people who are trying to violate U.S. law.
Biometrics' apparent impact on illegal entry attempts in Puerto Rico has been dramatic, down from over 10,000 attempts in 2005 to under 1,300 in fiscal 2009.
We believe that's due to the deterrent effect of them knowing that once they have been caught one time and have been sent into the biometric system, anytime they're called anywhere else, anywhere in the United States, and their prints are run, they're going to come back with a prior apprehension.
Most of these cases go through a fast-track program in which they plead guilty, and those that do not go to trial and are found guilty, we have a 100% conviction rate up to now.
The biometrics data collected by the Coast Guard is quickly shared with other agencies. The Border Patrol immediately knows a migrant's criminal history.
And in this specific case, this guy has served 6 years in Puerto Rico for attempted murder. This is one of the guys that was intercepted by United States Coast Guard.
Getting that information faster ultimately gets the individuals brought ashore for further prosecution or repatriated to their country of where they came from much quicker, and puts our cutter back in the operating area.
There is now more drug running than migrant smuggling. This boat was filled with duffel bags of cocaine when it was stopped near the shoreline. The Mona continues to be a perilous passage.
If you don't get hit by big waves, you're going to get hit by storms or, unfortunately, sharks if you're going to the ocean. So the bravery of these young Coast Guard members and the support that our office is provided by the Coast Guard is extraordinary.
Petty Officer Richard Hofschneider certainly had an extraordinary day when the Key Largo intercepted that Yola with 157 migrants aboard.
But myself, I was up for 26 hours straight, and then I just fell asleep on the keyboard on the computer. Woke up 20 minutes later, and I didn't even know where I was. That's how long we were doing it.
11 of the migrants on that boat were brought ashore for prosecution. Even though the number of attempts has declined, boats with fewer migrants aboard are still trying to make the crossing.
What we've seen most recently are smaller numbers in the neighborhood of 12, 13, maybe even 20, 25 migrants coming across.
Biometrics, which started here at Sector San Juan as a pilot program, has been incredibly successful and has been an enabling tool for us to do the job. Frankly, without biometrics, it would almost been impossible.
The Coast Guard's interest is really a safety of life at sea. What we're trying to do is really stop these smugglers and these unsafe ventures from happening.
So, new technologies are significantly enhancing safety at sea and immigration enforcement and the lives of amputee warriors of all services. And an old one, the telephone, is making a difference in the lives of wounded, ill, and injured Marines. I'm Staff Sergeant Brian Buckwalter. Thanks for watching Recon.